If we learned anything from films like Black Swan or The Substance, is that the road to excellence is paved with sacrifice. So when I saw that we were getting a male-centered psychological body horror film that is set in the world of American football produced by Jordan Peele, I was ecstatic. But is he him? Does him live up to the hype? Let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Emily, or La Movie Mija. I'm a part-time filmmaker, full-time movie lover, and this is my spoiler-free review of Him. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for checking out my video. And yes, this is a street vendor made Beyonce jersey from her Cowboy Carter tour. I thought it was fitting for the occasion. But let's talk about the movie at hand, Him, because there's a lot to dig into, so let's get into it. A young athlete descends into a world of terror when he's invited to train with a legendary champion whose charisma curdles into something darker. The film is directed by Justin Tipping and it stars Marlon Wayans, Tyreek Withers, Julia Fox, Jim Jeffries, and Tim Heidecker. Now, by the time I sat down to make this video, there's already been a lot of divisive comments and reviews about this film, and going through Letterboxd has been so much fun. It's Whiplash, but with a little bit more CTE. Midsommar meets The Substance, but on testosterone. And my personal favorite, a psychological panic attack sun-drenched in golden hour lighting. Deeply effed up. Now, I don't know about you, but when I see divisive reviews like this, it gets me really excited, because it must mean that this movie had something to say and people are reacting strongly to it. The less unanimous we are about a film, the more intrigued I am. I even like what Marlon Wayans posted on his own personal Instagram page, saying that innovation is not always embraced and art is to be interpretive and it's subjective. I love that he's calling out the fact that he has been part of so many movies that were critically panned at the time but have become cult classics. Some people even went into this movie thinking it was written or directed by Jordan Peele, even though nowhere in the promotional materials did it ever say that. But I can understand how people are confused because they know him as a writer-director, so they saw his name and probably made that connection. But no, this is a sophomore film from director Justin Tipping, and Monkeypaw Productions, Jordan Peele's production company, is the company that put this movie on. But you're not here to hear my critiques on the critics. I know you're here to hear my thoughts on the film. Enough of that. Let's get back into my review of Him. Starting out with the performances, I gotta say Marlon Wayans is excellent in this role. He is magnetic, he has bravado, he is so kinetic in his performance. Now, Wayans hasn't done much dramatic work outside of his memorable role in Darren Aronofsky's Requiem for a Dream, and that's a shame. In this movie, he clearly demonstrates his dramatic prowess, and I'd love to see more of him in roles like this. Alongside his co-star Tyreek Withers, Marlon Wayans did physically transform himself for this role to present himself as like a top-tier athlete, and the hard work pays off. Speaking of Tyreek Withers, I was also very impressed with his take on Cameron Cade, the ingenue athlete who is hoping to go pro, who has dedicated his whole life to football and is now on the precipice of a great opportunity to step into the shoes of the people he's once idolized. Fun fact about Tyreek Withers is that he actually played football in college before committing to acting full-time. I really enjoyed his take on Cameron Cade in this film. He's very guarded. He speaks in very like wooden mechanic way that you expect when you see those post-game interviews with athletes. And he kind of leans into this idea of having two personalities. You have the character that he is as a person outside of the game, like when he's on his own time with his family and friends. And then he transforms into Cameron Cade, the athlete. Comedian Jim Jeffries is also in this film, and he plays the personal sports doctor to Isaiah White. That's Marlon Wayans' character. And even though he has very little screen time, he left quite an impression on me. On the directing side, I was very impressed with the overall direction of this film. Most of the film moves through montage, and I was impressed with the variety and the intentionality that went into each one of these montages. There's a lot of them, one after another. It's like the main vehicle that transitions us from action to action, all set to different music, and they all have their own visual identity to them. Director Justin Tipping has a great eye for crafting a world on a tilt with provocative imagery that encourages uneasiness, which is perfect for a psychological thriller. And I love how much he leans into the idea of football as body horror. If you have spent any time in a football documentary that categorizes like CTE, the different kinds of concussions and the trauma and the brain injuries that football players subject themselves to while playing the sport, there's so much of that woven into the film, especially the imagery. There's elements like this thermal imagery to show the impact on the human skull and brain when players take a hit, and somehow that makes the impact so much more visceral, watching the brain just kind of wiggle around in your cranial cavity. It's not supposed to do that. There's also this great visual nod throughout the film of Cameron's stitches. He has a head injury, which plays into the stakes of his athletic career and body being on the line and sets in motion the psychological horror elements. It happens very early on in the film, and the way that they frame his head to see the staples, it mirrors the laces on a football, and it's just like little touches like that that got me really excited while watching the movie. In terms of cinematography, Tipping and DP Kira Kelly were very keen on using the production design to their advantage. This film is gorgeous. There are so many stunning visuals and colors and lights, and it's very trippy. Most of the film takes place at a compound in the desert, and while the external views of the building make it seem quite large, once you are inside, it feels quite claustrophobic. The way they layer a frame to obstruct the audience's view is really interesting. Costume designer Dominic Dawson also had a lot of fun playing into the visual identity of this movie, especially when designing the look for the San Antonio Saviors. There's the players' uniforms, there's the cheerleaders, there's a marching band, there's fan merch, there's rehearsal. Wait, this isn't a musical, this is sports. Practice uniforms, and some amazing mascot designs. All of this is so fun because you can see the themes of the story being played out through the visual design of the wardrobe. Like, the occult imagery is there. I can see any of these looks being iconic Halloween costumes, and I think that's a good measure of costume design. The overall visuals for this film are so trippy and fun and in your face. The colors are incredible. The stark contrast, the glitter, the textures, like the blood splatter, the cheerleaders. Like, there is so many visual elements that are going to just visually arrest you, and I was really into just how the overall visual presentation of the film came together. And it's not only the visual presentation that really attacks your senses, it attacks you sonically as well. Like, the absolutely spooky score by British producer The Hacks and Cloak really was off-putting in the best way. His credits include collaborations with Ari Aster like Eddington and Midsommar, all with very memorable soundscapes that can feed into the tensions of the project, and the same can be said of the film Him. It's a synergy between The Hacks and Cloak and director Tipping, like they either have the same cultural touch points to draw from, or they just get each other on another level. And that's most evident in these drawn out montage sequences. Like I mentioned, the visuals and the music work so effectively to create these unique moments in the film. It almost was too good at creating like these montage moments that were driven by music and visuals, because I found myself wondering, like, what would a Lady Gaga music video with Hacks and Cloak producing the music and like Justin Tipping directing look like? But that's not the movie's fault. That's just because that's how my mind works. But let's talk about the pacing and the structure, because I think this is where my issues with the film start. The film is punctuated by title cards to differentiate the day's cam spans at the training camp, and it was honestly necessary because I couldn't tell you what was going on. I can't imagine what this movie would have felt like without those title cards. At some point, it felt like it's trying too hard to feel trippy and lean hard into the Black Swan-inspired psychological thriller of it all. But the characters at some points don't feel like they're going through that much change. Like, they feel unaffected by the zaniness of the events that just preceded. Their experiences are getting weirder and more sinister, but it's like there's little to no consequences or change that comes from those experiences. So as the film builds to its third act, I can see and I can hear the adrenaline, the momentum pushing us to a big finale. The visuals are stunning, the music is driving, but the characters are coasting. I don't feel the transformation. I don't feel the aftermath of going through the experience of the film. And I'm all for a trippy, non-linear, confusing psychological thriller. I get we have an unreliable narrator or protagonist, and so we can't really rely on what they're seeing. We don't know what's real, what's not. I'm all for that type of experience, but I'm not really sure this movie really hit its stride when it came to selling those psychological elements. As far as the themes and the subject matter go, I think Him is cooking with some gas. Okay? There is such a rich buffet of meaning to feast on here, and all of it is very overt. Subtlety doesn't exist. She's not on the menu. Everything this movie is going for will hit you square in the face. It's bold. And I like how that sets this movie apart. I've said before, like in my review of Together, body horror gets to be big and splashy and in your face. Him is weaving a tapestry of masculinity, sports, religion, parasocial relationships, bodily autonomy, the occult, religion, and even Gen Z culture. Yes, all of that is there, and no, you don't have to look too hard to find it. This is where I think audiences will be divided. I think there's going to be a camp of folks who appreciate the brazen approach to this film. They're going to reach a high from the sensory overload, the onslaught of brutality and pageantry that spews across the screen and reverberates throughout the speakers. And on the other side, there's going to be people who will be so put off by the complete unsubtlety of the film. They will mistake its boldness for shallowness and think the movie is lacking of any heft or substance. Whether you like it or not, I admire that the film is taking the sensory recipe of its source material, football. I think the film is tackling the football body horror of it all at full speed, no holds barred, full out, like a football game. Whether you like it or not, I admire that this film is taking the sensory recipe of its source material, watching an American football game, and mimicking that to critique the culture that celebrates its violence. I mean, have you ever seen your usually quiet family member sit down to watch their favorite football teams play and the insanity that comes from that? In addition to the pursuit of greatness, one of the recurring motifs is the threat of becoming a mascot should you fail. And the correlation between sports, race, and masculinity is fascinating. So how do I feel about him? Overall, I admire how singular and unique this film feels. Even with so many nods to other sources of inspiration, I'm talking from Alien to Black Swan to The Substance to others that I don't want to give away because I don't want to spoil anything. I think it's special when a film feels like it could only be made by the hands that crafted it. There's a very timely and specific narrative thread on display here, and that makes me excited to see a movie with so much to say. But I do think the film suffers a little bit from third act syndrome, where all this amazing lead up doesn't really know where to go. The characters feel a little lost in their motivations towards the end, making the action feel really unexpected and confusing, and by the credits, I felt like the movie lost some of its promise and steam. However, I would 100% recommend this movie to anyone who is a fan of psychological horror or anyone who lives in the Venn diagram of football and Marlon Wayans fans, whoever you are. Even if it didn't stick the landing for me, I think the journey was still worthwhile. And on the Movie Mija meter, I give him 2.5 out of 5 stars. And there you have it. That is my review of him. I cannot wait to see if the prophecies Marlon Wayans foretold about his movies being ahead of the curve will be true of this movie. Only time will tell. And look at that. You made it all the way to the end of my video. Maybe you should consider liking and subscribing to my channel so you can get one new movie review from me every single week and we can be movie friends. In the meantime, let me know in the comments below your thoughts on the movie Him. And again, thank you so much for watching my video. I'll see you next time. Bye.